Hello, everybody. My name is John. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hey,
Hey, John. And today is the Tuesday morning through the Arch workshop. We're going to be talking a little bit, covering some material. What this is going to basically do is identify the beginning of the solution. We talked in depth about the problem yesterday. You know, we were born genetically different. We have an allergy where we react differently to alcohol and drugs than other people. And we also have an obsession of the mind that draws us back to it. So we got all of that pretty well covered yesterday. And today we're going to be looking at what do we do since we really are powerless. We can't change our genetic structure. We can't go in and stop ourselves from having this allergy. We can't, we can't deal with those kind of things. We can't change that fact. So we're going to start out here on page 44 for everybody who wants to turn to your big book. And it's the first paragraph. And it says, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably an alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So there's a couple of things we're going to look at here. One is that when you honestly want to, you haven't been able to quit entirely. I know for myself, there were many times I honestly wanted to quit, and I could not. I would find that I would start back up, sometime with a justification. Sometimes I just found myself starting back on drugs or alcohol, it just went. It was a continuous process over and over again. Then it talks about the other factor here, which is if you have little control over the amount you take in. And I always found that that was the case too. That I plan on taking in or rationing my drugs, trying to make it last through the week or what have you. And it never seemed to really work. And always when I took a drink of alcohol, I wanted more. And though there were rare occasions where I could control the amount I took in, for example, I'd say, well, I'm only going to drink 2 beers tonight, and I'd be absolutely determined. And I could do that once in a great while, but most often I would continue drinking. I'd say, what the heck, why not have some more? This also talks about a spiritual experience doing something. And I like the word that's used here. It conquers this disease. It doesn't say we're going to be fighting this disease daily, but we're actually going to conquer the condition. And to get into that, we're going to look at the next page. It's the first full paragraph on the next page. It says, lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's it. It's the lack of power. It's not that we don't have good values, good morals. Anytime I've sat down with an alcoholic or drug addict and had a discussion about what kind of values they have, they've always had relatively high values, high moral standards. I've never met a drug addict that said, yes, I grew up looking forward to being an irresponsible dad. I grew up looking forward to disappointing my mother and worrying everybody in my family. I've never met that alcoholic that had just poor values, that actually said they wanted to be the individual that was hurting everyone that was in their life. What I have met is a lot of people that had very high moral standards and very low moral performance and had this dilemma. They had lack of power to actually live up to their own standards. their own values, their own morals. If we look at the bottom paragraph there on page 44, it tells us a little bit about that. It says, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. And that's one of the things that we find in our society, that people will talk to us as though we just don't know. You know, they'll actually say things like, well, just quit. If they only realize how comical that sounds to us. Because we realize in our mind that that's like, you know, asking us to chop our arm off or our leg. And it's also just comical in the sense that, you know, oh, I've never thought of that before. I've never thought of just quitting.
Never occurred to me.
Never occurred to me that I should just quit. So what we're really looking at is people that are people that have very high moral standards, very low moral performance. And lack of power to carry out our own morals is really the problem. And that's what that's referring to. So let's jump on over here a couple of pages. On page 53, if somebody would like to read that first paragraph on 53.
Logic. I'm starting with logic.
Yes, sir.
Logic is great stuff. We like it. We still like it. It is not by chance we're given the power of reason to examine the evidence of our senses and to draw a conclusion. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostics inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it's more sane and logic to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said we don't know.
All right. So it tells us here, logic is great stuff. We like it. It also goes into, that's why it's difficult for us to explain how this works, is because we're talking about something different. We do know that our previous way was soft and mushy, that using our brains to govern our lives was actually not working so well. And then it just kind of comes to a point, it says, we don't know why it works. We just know that it does. Now, I'll pick up in the next paragraph. It says, when we became alcoholics, crushed by self-imposed crises, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? So that's bringing it down to a point here. We've got to answer that question. Either God is everything or he's nothing. Now, when it says, is God everything? Well, is God in everything you do? Are we looking for God's will on a continuous basis? That's really more of what this is talking about, as opposed to just looking at items in the world and saying, you know, God is every item in the world. Really is, if he's not a part of each equation, let's just say that, you know, we consult God daily, and we're doing this very consistently. But then on one big decision, we don't consult God on that one big decision, then that can crater everything in our life, can't it? Now, we could be doing well, rocking and rolling, going along, doing well, staying in touch with God, leaving him out of that one thing can make a huge difference. Crater everything. So this means, you know, God is in every decision. God is everything to us, and doing his will is everything to us, or it is nothing. Doing God's will is second on my list, doing my will is first, then he's really nothing to me, is he? Okay. Well, the next paragraph says, arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. we couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promise of a new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. Okay, let's look at what it's telling us here. We are confronted with the question of faith. So it's obviously telling us one of the reasons we've been getting drunk and using dope is our faith has either been misdirected or non-existent. Tells us we can't duck the issue any longer. We've got to get this faith thing right. Now, if you'll notice, it says we walked over the bridge of reason. And that's capital letters on bridge of reason. Do you see that in your books? That means it's pretty important. The desired new land that it talks about here. The new land is really the land of sanity. Because isn't that what we're talking about in our second step? Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So that's the new land we want to arrive in, is a place where we no longer make insane decisions. Now let's talk about insanity for a minute. It's not the same as crazy. Crazy is where I may not be behaving or coherent to my actions. I might see hallucinations. Crazy can be pretty deep. I can be imagining people following me that aren't there, etc. Crazy. Insane is really indicating that I'm making bad decisions on an ongoing basis. It's just insane of me to keep doing something that's going to kill me, harm my loved ones, put me in situations that are dangerous emotionally or physically to myself or others. That's the insanity. Well, the new land is one where I'm no longer doing that. I'm not making these insane decisions anymore. Now, the most insane decision I can make is probably taking a drink, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, after 15 and a half years without a drink, taking a drink would be insane because I can put together a whole list of all the many foolish and stupid and risky things that I have done while under the influence. I could have a whole list, 20 or 30 things. But you all know I could go take a drink right now, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. Knowing what the consequences are. My sober, 15 and a half year sober mind could go insane. So the problem's not really the drinking, is it? It'd be this mind that would work on me over a period of days or weeks and get me to take that drink. So my problem is not the drinking. My problem is this brain. Now, obviously, we know it's a disease. We talked about that yesterday, but it's, if I leave it up to my own reasoning power, my own brain, it could make the most insane decision that I could possibly think of, knowing what the consequences would be. So, now that we have an idea of what this new land is where I make these sane decisions. It does bring luster to tired eyes. Now it goes on to say, friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. Obviously, when we get to a meeting, we get to a place where other people are recovered and they're wanting to offer us the same thing. We're going to have those friendly hands stretched out in welcome. It goes on to tell us we're grateful that reason, if you'll notice again, it's capitalized, had brought us so far. We're grateful. So, the fact that you're here and that you're attending a meeting, that you're trying to treat this disease, well, obviously, we're grateful for that. We're grateful that our mind has brought us this far. But it's kind of like being at a slot machine, isn't it? Or at least it was with my life. It's like putting in the coins and pulling that handle over and over again. And every now and then, if you put in enough coins, you get a jackpot. Well, that's kind of where you're at in life right now. You've paid your dues. You've put the coins in there, and you've pulled the lever, and you've hit the jackpot. Now, this is better than the lottery, though, because, the lottery, you just get some money, right? Maybe a lot of it. This, you get your life. What's even better, you get to be sane. You get to be sane for the rest of your life. No more of that insanity that has driven all of us. So where you're at in life right now is equivalent to hitting that jackpot, winning that lottery type situation. So we're grateful that reason had brought us this far. Now we've got to look at what the next steps are. It says, perhaps, well, actually, I'm going to jump back one sentence. It says, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. What is stepping ashore?
Sanity and relying on God.
Yes, absolutely. Stepping ashore to where we are a new creature than the one that led us to drink and drug. Let's examine that for a moment. Before I ever took a drink or a drug, I was actually headed towards my first drink. So I need something better than I've ever had in my life. Because if I just get back to my old self, guess what my old self did? My old self eventually took a drink. So you'll hear that sometimes. I just want to be, back to what I was beforehand. Why? I probably was working towards my first drink at 7 years old. I didn't know it. But my thinking and my way of processing information was probably not working well at 7 years old. And it was only getting worse with each year that passed. So what I need to do is not lean too heavily on reason here. And I need to do something else. It's alluding to that. It tells me in the next sentence, that was natural. But let us think a little more closely. So what is natural? It was natural for us to lean on reasoning powers. Then it goes on to say, without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? So it's not complete reason that got us here. Or did we not believe in our own reasoning? So even though reason got us here, it was our faith in our own reasoning that got us to this point where we've hit this jackpot. The opportunity to be sane. Goes on to say, did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. So yes, we've had faith. And if you'll notice on the whiteboard here, there is a circle that's kind of broken up like a pie chart. It says self, money, things, people, and God. And you'll notice God just has this little sliver here because my faith was broken up into I had faith in money. I had faith in myself. I had faith in things. I had faith in people. And in this case, what it's talking about is I had faith in the God of reason, my own reasoning power. In fact, I wasn't even going to believe in any other God unless I could reason it out. So I was thinking of my mind as kind of the Alpha and Omega, instead of letting God be the Alpha and Omega. Let's go ahead and write the word faith up here. Faith. So let's look at faith for a minute. It's not something we get more of or lose. We're born with the ability to have faith. The day we're born, we have faith in our caretakers, the people that are taking care of us, or our caregivers. We have absolute faith that we're going to be taken care of as a little baby, right? And that continues on. That my parents are going to take care of me. Family's going to take care of me. I don't even really worry about it at all. What happens, though, is somewhere along the way, I start getting the idea that I need to lose faith in a higher power, lose faith in just a trust that I have in the universe, because that's basically what a child has, is somehow I'm going to be able to survive, to where I start having faith in these other things. So it's not like faith increases and decreases, it gets diverted. I still have the same amount of faith I did when I was a little baby, when I completely trusted my mother to care for me. My faith has not diminished a bit, and it's not going to increase. It's a constant. But where did I put that faith? Well, somewhere along the way, I got told I had to put that faith in a job and money. But somehow, I had to put that faith in what other people thought, other people's opinions. That I had to put that faith in having things. Faith in my own ability to think. That's why we call it abject faith in the God of reason here. The word abject basically means we're slavishly subject to it. It's kind of a wretched thing when we're abject. So I've been a slave to my own reasoning power. Now I'm going to give you the final proof on what I'm saying is, think how many times we've reasoned it out that we need to go take a drink. And I need to go use some drugs. So here's the same brain that gets me to do all sorts of things. Whether it's walking out on my family and going out and be gone for a week. Whether it's breaking a law, whether it's spending all my paycheck on drugs and alcohol, whatever the case is, this brain has led me to a lot of places that were not desirable. Yet I've got faith in it. I really want you to let that soak in, how this brain can take over at any moment and start doing that to you again. Actually, I think it's a part of the brain. I call him Mr. Addiction. That's kind of how I've started identifying that part of my insane brain. But he can take over at any time if I don't have a really good defense. And tell me it's a good idea to go to the dope house. Tell me it's a good idea to stop by the bar. It's usually something like, man, you've been doing this program so well. You've been sober now for 6 months. You deserve a drink. Maybe it'll be different this time. You know, you got all that knowledge over there. I'll just have one. I've got faith in the brain that will tell me stuff like that. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary that I don't just have one. I'm abjectly faithful to the God of reason. That's what it's talking about. And it is a God when it gets in that phase. If I get at that point, next thing you know, I am in a bar. And it is my God. It's taking me places that I have no control of. This goes on to tell us that we found too that we have been worshipers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Have we not variously worship people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? Let's break down these words a little bit. We worship sentiment. Sentiment is a long-cherished belief. It's accompanied by a feeling. Kind of the word sentimental is closely related to the word sentiment. It's an attitude I have. So I worship my old attitude. Despite the fact I've got overwhelming evidence that everything that I had in my life led me to get in the trouble that I got in with alcohol, where I was craving alcohol and obsessing on alcohol. Now, as far as external things, we know sometimes it results in jail or hospitals. Sometimes there are people that just can't stop drinking. So it's, when I talk about it's led me to these things, I'm not just talking about the material, external fruit of it, if you will, but where it has led me. Oftentimes it's a real bad situation, but what about the person who's not suffering from going to jail or the hospital right now or anything, is just at home having to pour themselves a drink so that they can get through the day? My beliefs led me to that point, and that's the real point I'm wanting to make here. My attitudes, my ideas, and my emotions led me to that point. So just going back to the old personality is not going to work. I said it a couple of minutes ago, and I'm saying it again because that's what we think. We identify, and it's not surprising, right? That's my identity. Who I was as a child at 7, 8, 10, 14 years old, that's an identity I started developing. And yet that very identity is what has gotten the results that it did. It led me to that first drink. It led me to continue drinking. So we hear it in many different religions and so forth. You've got to die to yourself. That identity has to die. Those beliefs, that sentiment, I've got to change. A complete personality change has to occur because that personality is a drunk. Okay, now I've also worshiped things. Okay, there's a lot of ways of doing that. I can worship. If I only get the right woman, and somehow that's going to make it all better. If I only get the right vehicle, then I'll be happy then. Or if I only get the right home. And usually it's a combination of all that. If I get the right house, I get the right car, I get me some kids, and I get the home, then somehow life's going to be good then. But guess what? There are plenty of men out there right now that have a beautiful wife, family. We read about it yesterday, didn't we? In Fred's story. Children of college age, great job, wonderful wife. So for me to have faith that those things are going to bring any kind of satisfaction is insane. That's the insanity of step 2. The insanity of step 2 that they're talking about is the belief that by somehow manipulating my material world, I'm somehow going to feel better and do better in my spiritual world. That it's going to bring me the satisfaction that I'm seeking. That's the insanity. So at this point, what we're really doing is we're coming to a conclusion that I've got to quit that insanity. I've got to quit thinking if I just get the right job, life's going to get better then. I've got to get sane, which is, here's the sane thought, I'll probably be about as happy working at McDonald's as I will be working at Halliburton. I will probably be about as happy making $150 a week as I am making $5,000 a week. And there's nothing wrong with having a good job. But the reality is, for me to think it has anything to do with me being satisfied and feeling this vacancy that's inside my stomach or inside my heart, that's insane. $5,000 a week won't fill that vacancy any better than $150 a week will. So I've got to quit that insanity of continuing to tell myself, because see, you can see at this moment how that would be, money is my God. If I only get $5,000 a week, that'll do it. I'll be happy then. Well, what I've really said is, money is my God, and I'm under a delusion, and I'm crazy, or not crazy, insane. I'm insane. That's an insane thought. So next here, we talked about things, we talked about money, and we talked about ourselves. And I think ourselves could be such a broad area. It could be if I just get the respect that I deserve, the position in society that I need, the credit for all that I do kind of thing, then that'll do it. That'll bring me the satisfaction I'm looking for in life. But it doesn't. So that's the insanity of it. So we're going to look at, if I tell myself any of these things are going to bring me even a little bit of satisfaction and happiness, I've got to remember that that's insane thinking. What are these things? We'll just go through the list real quick. Sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. Sanity is realizing, yeah, I can have beliefs, I can have sentiment, I can have things, I can have money, and I can, have credibility and accolades, but they have nothing to do with making me whole or bringing me the desired satisfaction. Once I accept that, that's a sane thought. Now we move on from here to page 60. The bottom paragraph of page 60 says, the first requirement, let's look at that word requirement. It means this is a requirement. This is not an option. You hear all the time in meetings, it's only suggested. Well, requirement seems a little stronger than suggestion, doesn't it? It's a requirement if we are to have the life that we're seeking. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like the actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. Okay, we discussed that this is a requirement, that we look at the reality that any life ran on self-will can hardly be a success. It's just not going to work. It doesn't say just any alcoholic's life either. It says any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Sure, we may accumulate a lot of that stuff, things, money, pomp, prestige. But how many people are out there right now that have all those things that aren't drunks, that are just not satisfied and some of them absolutely miserable with their life. Tons of them. So self-will is not going to lead to success for anyone. But in our case, self-will will kill us. It also tells us that if we're running on self-will, we're always going to be colliding. It's like a car, you know. Imagine a car driving down the road and just plowing into another car. We're going to be colliding with people or things. And then it goes to tell us that we're like the actor who wants to run the whole show. So we are an actor. We're here to play the role that God has assigned, but we end up trying to be the director running the show. We're not even the director. It tells us a little bit about this. It says, and I'm going to put my name on the page because I think that's real good to do. It says, if John's arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as John wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including John, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. John may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, John may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. John becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit John. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, John is sure that other people are more to blame. John becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is John not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is John not the victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to the rest of the players that these are the things John wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is John not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? So let's look at this. It tells us that we can be kind and considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. And still be self-seeking the whole time. Because this is really, it's kind of the way we prefer to do it. If I can be completely selfish and be nice and look good doing it, that's better. That's better. But if I can't get what I want by being kind, what happens then? I'll talk crap about you behind your back. I'll get mad. I'll get loud with you. I'll try to force you. I'll try to scare you into doing what I want. Yeah. So it's self-seeking, whether I'm being kind or whether I'm being mean. Self-seeking is the problem here. Then it tells me that I start blaming people and so forth. But down here, near the middle of this second paragraph, it says, is he not the victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? So I've got a delusion. A delusion is part of that insanity, right? It's something that's not real, though I believe it's real. I really believe in a delusion. You know, if I've got a delusion going on, that means I think it's reality. But it's not. And this delusion is that I can wrest, and that's W-R-E-S-T, like wrestle, satisfaction, and happiness out of this world if I manage well. Now, we hear it all the time. You know, as we start the worship we were talking about a minute ago, of money and things, and if I just get the right family, the wife, the etc., the truck and the car and the boat, then I'm going to be satisfied and I'm going to be happy. If I manage well and I get the right job with the right money and I save the right money, well, you can already tell that's a busy mind right there. And all for naught. So often you see people get all of that stuff.
They're still miserable.
And they're just as miserable as they were when they got started. Nothing's really changed other than a lot of times they will have money and they'll keep trying to blot out their miserable existence by buying something else. And you'll see them getting into the point that you've just got crap galore.
Stuff.
Running down to the store all the time. Over at the expensive stores, ordering things off the internet. Anything to blot out the miserable existence. Well, that's not what we want. We want a satisfying life. We don't want to just have money that we're using like a drug. Because isn't that like a drug? If I get over there on the internet and I'm getting all excited because I'm buying something I don't need, what I'm doing really is trying to blot out my miserable life for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes in the mail, getting all excited about that, and I'm blotting it out for a couple more minutes. And if I get enough of that going on, then I'm just blotting out life.
Where you not?
But at any moment, it's like a stack of cards or a house of cards. At any moment, you take that money away, I lose that job, the stock market crashes, or whatever it is that I'm relying upon, I've got nothing. I can't blot out life anymore. Well, that's an example of how we use money. It's the same thing as going out and snorting cocaine or anything. It's the same deal. It's the same insane mind. That I can wrestle satisfaction if I only manage well. Well, there's some other things that can get pretty crazy too. If I can just get my kids to do what I need them to do, if I can get the people at work to just do what I want, if I can get the people around me to behave correctly, well, that's the same kind of thing. I can get so wrapped up in trying to fix you, but I don't have to think about me.
Yep.
If I don't have to think about me, then I can actually get sick with that too. Now, not to say that if you're a person that's actually dedicated to helping people, which you're going to be as you carry this message, that there isn't some real good to helping people. And yeah, it does tend to work to take our minds to a new place, that new land it's talking about. But when I'm doing that to my wife, trying to get her all straightened out because she's just not quite getting it right, and it's over and over, or I'm trying to do that to my kids, you can see the difference here. So I'm really pointing out how we can use people as our method to blot out our miserable existence. The idea is don't have a miserable existence in the first place. Well, how do we do that? Well, it tells us on page 62 that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. I'm going to go ahead and read this paragraph. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt.
Every time.
So my self-delusion, we talked a lot about that, all that self-delusion. I'm driven by a delusion. We kind of belabored that, and that was good. Self-seeking, getting what I want because I think that I know what's going to bring me happiness, and I don't, right? That's a delusion. I don't know what's going to bring me happiness. I mean, I could come up with a whole list of things that I think will make me happy. You know, my bucket list kind of thing, only I make that for life. I can think that going on a great vacation will make me happy. And by the time I get where I'm going, I realize that it's really not making me happy. Maybe I'm a little bit excited about, new scenery and so forth, but I'm not all that much happier than I was before I went on that trip. There might be some good things to do, and there's nothing wrong with the life experience. But it's a delusion that I know what's going to make me happy, this self-seeking. When I base it on what I think that I'm taking over God's role. And that's the real point behind this. Then, of course, I have self-pity when I feel like life isn't treating me fair. That's driving my selfishness and my self-centeredness. So we jump down to this next paragraph, actually the bottom paragraph. Let's jump all the way down there in the essence of time. It says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, sounds pretty important. First of all, we had to quit playing God. I don't know what's going to make me happy. I don't know what's going to bring me the satisfaction or fill this vacancy that's inside me. I really don't know. But it tells me I've got to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be the director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Now, this is the Through the Arch Tuesday morning workshop. This is what we're talking about here. God being the director is the keystone. That's just really accepting that I don't know what's going to bring me satisfaction and happiness out of this world. I don't know how to manage my life. That's the keystone. If I can't get that part, then, well, it's just like this little illustration here on the board. If I pull that keystone out, then there's nothing for these other sides to rest upon, and that archway is going to collapse. But I don't get this critical element, that I don't know what's going to bring me happiness. I don't know what's going to satisfy me. I do not know what's going to make life better. Accepting that if I use my self-seeking self-will, that I'm just as likely to make myself miserable as I am to make myself happy. Then I'm getting it. Complete trust that God knows why I was born, why I live, and why I take the space I do on this planet. Why I have a human existence. That's all up to God. I do not know. I do not know what's going to make me happy. It goes on to say on page 63, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter we were reborn. Let's look at what that's telling us. First thing on that first line, it says, sincerely. When we sincerely took such a position. So we've got to be sincere about this. Half-hearted approaches won't work. Got to be sincere. It tells us that remarkable things are going to happen. These are pretty big, good things. Remarkable. It tells us we have a new employer. See, God is our new employer, as it talks about, or it illustrates on the board. God is our new employer. He's all powerful, it tells us. It means he's not some second-rate employer like Halliburton or McDonald's, as I mentioned earlier. He's not some second-rate employer. We've got an all-powerful employer. Tells me also he's going to provide what I need. What do I need? I need my food, shelter, clothing, love, companionship, friendship. You could make the list pretty big. He's going to provide all of that. If, this is a big word, if I keep close to him. What is keeping close to him?
It's performance work well. Or it's
No, I got to keep close to him. That's the next phase. But
prayer, meditation.
prayer and meditation. That's a good one. Go ahead. Okay. Prayer and meditation. Consciously aware and trying to stay aware of what God wants from me.
Watching for fear, dishonesty.
Watching, yeah. So I've got to stay close to God. Really kind of what that means is all day long asking God, thy will be done, not mine. From the moment I start eating breakfast till the minute I lay my head on the pillow, I can't ask myself too many times during the day, what is your will for me, God? Guide and direct me. I can pick up a book that is a trusted, safe book that will share with me information about God. That's another way of sticking close to Him. Being around people that are on a similar journey seeking God is another way of staying close to God. But I've got to stay close to Him. It's if I stay close to Him and perform His work well. Now I've got to ask, what is His work? Well, it's a rhetorical question, so I'm going to explain that. What is God's work? Well, obviously, it told us on the preceding pages that just being kind and loving and all that, self-sacrificing. I can do that and still be self-seeking, right?
Mm-hmm.
God's work is for me to contribute to life, as it says here, and to do it selflessly. That's why I do what I do. It's because the reason I got up this morning, I had this meeting, is because I want to perform God's work well. Saving His other children's lives has come to my mind, my heart, and my soul, and everything I've learned, felt, and seen has led to me realizing there is nothing more important than saving another human being's life, one of God's other children's life. I look at it so seriously, I look at it with the same viewpoint as if someone were in the river drowning. I'm not going to hesitate to jump in that river and save their life. Well, there's this river of tears of addiction that people are drowning in all the time. I'm not going to do any different than I would with people that are drowning in the river, in the water. I'm going to try to save their lives. So, see, that's my job. It's a little different than what I grew up being told. What I've been told by society is that serving God is running around being kind all day to people. I want to be kind, yeah. But I want to contribute to life. Well, how better to contribute to life than to save a life?
Can't get better than that.
It's really simple, like God made it that simple that contributing to life is saving lives. That's a lot more important than how many hamburgers I produce at McDonald's or how many pieces of equipment I sell working over at Halliburton. It's a whole lot more important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I could be salesman of the year. I've basically accomplished nothing other than, a bunch of people
Whoopee.
building my ego a little bit. Employee of the month at McDonald's. What have I accomplished?
Get a coupon.
Let's go.
What have I accomplished? Nothing.
Yeah.
If I have the best job in the world, say I'm a major hedge fund manager and I make hundreds of millions of dollars per year, what have I accomplished? Nothing. Not compared to your life. Let's just say I was a big hedge fund manager and I'm making hundreds of millions of dollars per year, but I'm willing to let you die. That's the price I have to pay to get my money. To let you die? Well, that's not a very good swap out, is it? That's not a very good swap out, especially from your point of view. If I'm like, man, I'm so busy with my life, I'm going to let Jacob die. I'm so busy with my life, I'm going to let Ryan die. Because I've got other things that are more important to do. Oh, and somebody else would take care of them anyway. I can get into all of my justification and rationalization. That's the price I have to pay to be self-seeking. Think about how serious that price is. It's almost like killing people, isn't it? If I let you die so I can pursue my own selfish ends, then that's just the same as killing you. That's my awakening. When they talk about the spiritual awakening, if you'll notice, the spiritual awakening described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is Bill Wilson helping people, right? Giving up all of his old ideas, all of his old attitudes, all of his old emotions, and starting to help people. When we get it in perspective, we're talking about sanity here, remember? Sanity is recognizing your life is more important than some stupid crap I can throw in the bank or how well I can decorate my house. Your life is far more important. When you look at it that way with the people that you encounter, then you're sane also. But as long as it's about you getting what you want because somehow you're under that delusion, you can wrestle satisfaction out of life if you just get all the right trinkets, that's insane. Because one, we know it's not going to bring you happiness. Two, we know it's not going to have satisfaction. And the price of it is entirely too expensive. It means human lives are going to be lost for you pursuing those things. Now, am I saying you go without being a successful person and having some nice stuff? No. Most people, just by virtue of being helpful to others, inadvertently become very successful. Why? Because you have more relationships, more trust, more validity in life, and as a byproduct of just doing God's work well, you get more secure in every area because remember it says He provided what we needed. We kept close to Him and performed His work well. Well, I'm not going to do it right now, but I can give you a whole list of people who have followed this program that have an overabundance of material wealth and they didn't even set out to get it.
Are material wealth, is that like bumper stickers?
No, we're talking about just like material possessions, stuff, material possessions and stuff. So, this is where we come to step 3, and that's where you actually embrace this concept of trusting God and His infinite power rather than our finite selves. And we're just going to break down the 3rd step prayer and wrap up this meeting. It says, we were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood Him. Notice the word Maker is used there. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and do with me as Thou wilt. So we're making an offer to God that He would do with us what He wants to do. That means if He wants us to live in Africa, sleep in a hut.